The default bin. The default specification defines a bin that is associated with none of the defined values bins. The default bin catches the values of the coverage points that is not lying within any of the defined bins. Let's look at an example to understand the usage of default bin. Here the cover group name is bus values and the cover point is written for the variable ADDR. Note that the width of ADDR is 10. So the input ADDR is a bus of width 9 down to 0. So it can take any value from 0 to 1023. Now you can see that the first bin is listing all the values from 0 to 63 using the square bracket, and also another value which is 65. Thus this will create a single bin which will hit if the address is falling with any of the value from 0 to 63 or 65. And the second bin which is mid-range is an array of bins. It will create, it is listed with the values from 128 to 255. Thus it will create 128 separate bins for the values between 128 and 255. So this is wrong, this is 128 here. And the third bin, you can see that it is given a name like high range, and it is listed with the values like 255 to $. So in bin usage, if you are using the value $, it means that it is the highest value possible by this variable. Thus this will list all the values from 255 to 1023, which is the highest possible value by the that can be assigned to this 10-bit address variable. So this will create a single bin because there is no array symbol here. It will create a single bin for all the values between 255 and the highest possible value by the variable. And the fourth bin is named as some insignificant, and it is not listing any values, but we are using a keyword called default. So this will create a single bin for all the default bins. That means it will create a single bin for all the values of this variable which are not falling in any of these bins. So which all are those values? So you can see that from all the values from 0 to 63 is listed here, and 65 is also listed here. The 64 is missing here, and the values from 66 to 127 is not listed here anywhere, and from 128 to 255 is listed here, and also from 255 to the maximum value is also listed here. Thus in this example, this default is will represent all the values that is not listed here, which are the values like 64, 66, 67 up to 127. So this will create a single bin for all the values which are not listed here. So this is a usage of default bin in coverage group creation. You should note one point here is that the coverage calculation for a cover point shall not take into account of the coverage captured by the default bin. That is, even though you are specifying a default bin for the cover point, the coverage captured by the default bin should not be considered for the final coverage calculation. Then you might come across a question, then why should I specify a default bin, or what is the actual use case of a default bin? So the use case is like, it is to capture the insignificant values in the simulation. If you are specifying a default bin, you will come to know that whether most of the times you are injecting a large number of insignificant values into the particular signal, and you can reduce that by tuning your stimulus or your test, and thus by save some cost in the simulation. Another point about the default bin creation is you cannot explicitly ignore these default bins by using the keyword ignore bins. So you will learn what is ignore bins keyword in the coming sessions, and remember that you cannot use the ignore bins keyword along with the default keyword in the bin creation. And as a summary, use the default bin creation only when you wanted to explicitly know the insignificant values in the simulation.